hear them come around again. Hear the trumpets sound again. Hear the drums resound again beneath the walls of Troy. When nations seek to find their friends, they first compare their foes. And if the list turns out the same, a sour alliance grows. The patriot must be revealed, he has no need to hide.
Hello, from the World Peace Forum in Vancouver. Today we are happy to present two speakers. First, Ingo Schmidt, explaining the differences between Marxism and Keynesianism. And in the second part, the second workshop, we will listen from Alison Ayers, who warns us about the nature of fascism. Here is Ingo.
When all of a sudden the idea that the civilized world is occupied by people who have no other desire than engaging in trade, turned into this mass slaughter of, well, largely workers, but also peasants, others, poor people, ordinary people being slaughtered in an imperialist war. That was a major blow to the liberal idea that if you have trade, you don't have competition between great powers, you don't have war. And the second blow to liberalism in terms of economics was the Great Depression. Marxists for a long time were known as the ones to talk about crisis all the time. So Marxists always had it difficult when capitalism was prosperous. If there's no crisis, everybody says, look at these stupid Marxists. They predict a crisis one after the other. No crisis is happening. There's ever more profits, prosperity, well, and if worse comes to worst, even higher wages for the workers. But that's not so important. The higher profit is the main part. Well, that didn't happen during the Great Depression. Not just did workers lose their jobs, there were also capitalists losing profits. Well, and this is the point Marxists were really jumping at. They thought, now it's our time to explain the crisis, to come to terms with it, and design economic policies. Obviously, there was already the Soviet Union, there was Soviet communism. The party line was imminent crisis of capitalism. That was 1928. Well, in 1929, it actually did happen. So it seems they were bang on. They should have been ready to deal with it. And there was a certain upswing of communist-led struggles. I mentioned a few already, around Popular Fronts, about the CIO. The interesting thing is about the Popular Front that was an alliance with the bourgeoisie. And the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, are the guys who don't like a capitalist crisis. That's the guys who want to make a profit. What happened then was that Soviet Marxists kind of got a bit more cautious about talking about the collapse of capitalism. Well, this softening of the diagnosis of collapsing capitalism was taken by the Soviet rival Trotsky and his followers as one of the reasons to start something new, the Fourth International. And the founding document, or the kind of call to start anew the Fourth International in 1938, was to reinforce the idea of imminent capitalist collapse. Collapse of capitalism, as we know with hindsight for sure, was avoided by embarking on the largest arms race in world. Well, there were larger arms races later, not as disastrous. Anyways, the collapse didn't happen, so that was in terms of practical policies not too important what the Trotskyites had to say. Let's see whether the Social Democrats had something more important to say. Well, the Social Democrats, always eager long before the Soviets discovered the Popular Front, were Social Democrats eager to be good friends with the bourgeoisie. And because the bourgeoisie, as I said, doesn't like crisis, the Social Democrats had the idea of saying there won't be a crisis anymore, particularly not if you, capitalists, talk to me, Social Democrat, then we can kind of work it out and we can avoid this free market. Marxists called that anarchy of the markets, and the anarchy of the markets leads to crisis. If we, capitalists and social democrats and the union leaders, just get our heads together, we talk it out, what is a proper wage, what is a proper profit, then there won't be any crisis. Well, capitalists didn't want the social democratic lesson and they got a crisis. And so social democracy had to recognize, well, we were not able to avoid this crisis with our great class collaboration because there was nobody to collaborate with us. And they had to change their tone, and so they did. And when 1929 happened, what they said was, it's a cyclical crisis. This is quite normal because they had all read Marx and Engels. It's a cyclical crisis. These things come and go, and once this one will be gone, then we suggest again to the capitalists to be good friends. Obviously, it didn't happen because the World War happened. There were even Marxists in trade unions, mostly affiliated with the social democratic parties. So what these Marxists and trade unions had to say about the crisis was exactly the same what the social democrats were saying. Well, it's too bad if you lose your job, but there isn't anything we can do about it. Keynes, the guy who gave the name to this theory, or after whom the theory later was named, was a different kind of guy than all these Marxists. He was a member of the British bourgeoisie. He was he was just an economics professor, but also he was an advisor to British governments at various points in time. And what he was most prominently battling was what his companion Joan Robinson would later call the Treasury view. The Treasury is the British Ministry of Finance, and those were the guys, that was a stronghold of, if you don't have money, you can spend it. And that was a strong belief, and if enough people, particularly if they are holding power, the tools of power, of displaying power, it actually does matter quite a bit what you think. And these guys thought, we don't have money, so we won't spend anything. And Keynes was arguing against them, suggesting his famous policies of, well, if we don't have the money, we might take out a credit, and then we can spend money. So there was a great third way between all kinds of socialism and liberalism, and that was Keynesianism. And since the Americans wanted to secure world capitalism, they happily embarked on those policies, which were quite successful for a while. What was Keynes talking about in theoretical terms? Well, first he was a fierce critic of economic liberalism. According to economic liberalism, should you have a crisis, in the first place it can't happen, but should it happen, there's an easy fix to that. Just lower the wages, then you have higher profit. That sounds like a bastard version of Marx, and then everything will be fine again. Keynes criticized that in a very subtle but very brilliant way. He said, if capitalists in the face of a crisis lower their wages, one of the two following things will happen. Either capitalists will lower their prices,